Good morning. I think we can start, and I shall appreciate if we be seated. We are around 15 minutes late, but hopefully we can make it. Distinguished heads of states and governments, distinguished ministers, distinguished representatives of intergovernmental organizations, associate members of regional commissions, United Nations system entities, non-governmental organizations, and other stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, I call to order the first interactive panel discussion of the second high-level United Nations Conference on South-South Cooperation. Let me take this opportunity to cordially welcome all of you to this panel discussion. I am honored to serve as your co-chair, together with Her Excellency Dr. Shahar Ahmed Mohamed Abdul Monem Nasser, Minister of Investment and International Cooperation of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Her last name is Abdul Monem Nasser, but you should not think that we are related. But in the long run, we do related. As delegations are aware, the topic of our discussion this morning is competitive advantages and opportunity of South-South cooperation and sharing of experiences, best practices, and success stories. And a summary of our proceedings will be presented to the concluding plenary meeting tomorrow. I'm delighted to welcome the distinguished panelists for today's interactive discussion. His Excellency Dongyu Kuo, Vice Minister of Agriculture of China. Yes. You are here. Thank you. Dr. Rahman Nuruddin, Deputy President of Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, TICA. Mr. George MOREIRA de Silva, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Ms. Cornelia Reicha, Vice President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. And Mr. ENRIQUE MARURI, Director, Advocacy and Campaigns, Oxfam Intermon Oxfam in Argentina. Oxfam, right? Everywhere. Okay, thank you. Before we proceed, I'd like to make some introductory remarks. South-South cooperation reflects the pursuit of the developing countries to find solutions to their common development challenges. 40 years after the adoption of the strategic Buenos Aires Plan of Action for promoting Southern cooperation, the international system is undergoing a significant structural transformation. Certain competitive advantages drive the South to cooperate. First, and perhaps most significantly, South-South cooperation benefits countries by instilling in them a sense of ownership of activities and projects undertaken. A second major advantage of South-South cooperation benefits cooperation is participants' willingness to share experiences and best practices with neighbors and other countries within the South. Third, South-South cooperation can also be advantageous where developing countries share a common problem. This applies regardless of the relationship between the countries in question. Fourth, in some areas, notably that of technical assistance, South-South cooperation is unquestionably cost-effective, even where a developing country has sought technical assistance under a triangular cooperation arrangement with a third-party footing, the costs are still reasonable. Fifth, the South-South cooperation has worked particularly well in the area of trade. Proximity and regional integrations open up more opportunities for business and reduce cost of doing business. No wonder half of the global trade is now being done within the South-South countries. Along with these elimination of trade barriers, in solidarity among the South, investment in infrastructure, providing duty-free, quota-free market access to the LDC's products would enhance trade among the developing countries. Consumers worldwide are already benefiting and will do so increasingly from the low-cost, high-quality products and services now on offer from the South. The fact that more and more developing countries are becoming competitive participants in global production chains and labor markets is likely to have a net job-creating impact in the South. Sixth, many southern countries are having common vulnerabilities caused by climate change. Several developing countries have gathered unique knowledge and experiences by adopting sustainable, low greenhouse gas emission and climate-resilient development pathways. Collaboration among the Global South will contribute to enhance the capacity of the most vulnerable developing countries to further their climate actions. Indeed, the Southern solutions will benefit these countries significantly to address both climate change and multiple other development challenges. We need to find better mechanisms to translate the competitive advantages into opportunities to eradicate poverty. There are many areas such as food security, disaster management, agriculture, trade, etc., where South-South cooperation will flourish further. For example, Bangladesh is now using ICT to improve its public service delivery. It has also developed many varieties of salinity-resistant rice. We are also using ICT for better public service delivery as well as early warning and building resilience against disasters. However, there is need for inter-regional and global frameworks to gather and incentivize best practices in the South-South cooperation. Yesterday, in the general debate, I have proposed to set up a forum of finance, foreign, or development ministers of the South, which would provide a platform to innovate, share, and utilize their respective initiatives and best practices. I have drafted a book which shows the 48 best cases of the South, which are adaptable in other societies. Bangladesh would also set up a South-South Knowledge and Innovation Center. I would also stress upon the efforts of bilateral donors, international financial institutions, and UN organizations to support South-South cooperation in a coordinated manner to avoid overlaps. Excellencies, the presentation of the distinguished panelists and the ensuing discussions will provide an opportunity to explore the following questions. In what ways can developing countries enhance the conceptual framework of South-South cooperation, bringing to bear South-South cooperation plurality of approaches, as well as the experiences of developing countries and other South-South cooperation actors? What are the new frontiers of collaboration among developing countries? How can developing countries continue to exchange policy experiences in a more systematic way as they continue to make significant advances in the economic and social domain? We look forward to an engaging discussion and constructive recommendations for stronger South-South and triangular cooperation. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'll now give the floor to my fellow co-chair to make some introductory remarks about the theme of our discussion. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to thank my fellow co-chair, Minister Abdul Menaim, Minister of Foreign Affairs from Bangladesh, for his valuable remarks. And I want to just make a very short intervention to allow more time for the interventions and statements from our panelists, but more important, also the interaction from the audience in the floor. So, Excellencies, since the declaration of Buenos Aires Plan of Action for Cooperation among the Developing Countries in 1978, we, countries of the Global South, have come a long way in fostering our mutual cooperation and knowledge exchange. We have realized that through our similar development pathways, we can share innovative, cost-effective, and easily adaptable solutions to common challenges, as was highlighted yesterday in my statement. Thus, peer learning has become a central and dynamic component of South-South cooperation that is based upon shared values, mutual interests, and trust, a true partnership between equals. Over the years, Southern partners gain skills and experiences and build their own capacities as new providers and development cooperation. This created a paradigm shift from the traditional mindset where countries in the North were providers and countries of the South were more of recipients. Now, all countries can be providers, facilitators, and beneficiaries of this knowledge sharing. There is substantive evidence showing that South-South cooperation has immense potentials to accelerate the progress in achieving the sustainable goals, especially among emerging and developing economies. And this is what we want to highlight today in our panel. National, regional, and international initiatives in sharing best practices, ranging from setting up South-South think tanks, centers of excellence, portfolios of successful stories, trade linkages to the production of digital capacities catalogs that compile information on successful practices. And let me here highlight that the South-South cooperation is not just limited to technical assistance, capacity building, and knowledge sharing, but in fact, we need to also highlight and stress the importance of the regional projects, and especially mega projects. And maybe here just like 3 highlights. Infrastructure, connectivity, economic geographic remapping among the South-South countries is important. Inclusive and sustainable growth is achieved through a solid and sound infrastructure. Second, the digital economies is very important because that will also ensure more inclusiveness and will also allow for growth to pick up at a more accelerated rate. Third is investing in human capital, education, and health. These are areas where we also see that South-South cooperation are pillars. So here, the integration among especially youth, and here with a lot of emphasis again on gender mainstreaming. With regard to Egypt, I want to also stress that we are here very committed to the South-South cooperation agenda, especially as Egypt, His Excellency President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi presides the African Union. So we want to take this opportunity with the large and very active participation of more than 150 countries to also highlight that. And when we're talking about the African Union, it's not just limited to African countries getting together, but it's also reaching out to our colleagues from the South, the best practices, international best practices from the North, but also our development partners of whom few are sitting here on this panel, but others are participating from the floor. So again, in our panel discussions today, we see the opportunity to share evidence and findings of the experiences of our esteemed panelists who come from diverse backgrounds, indeed. We will take stock of the significant accomplishments, appreciate and capitalize on achievements, learn from the pitfalls, address the challenges, and document lessons learned. And last but not least, we encourage constructive feedback from all our participants in this hall today. Thank you very much, my co-chair. And the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Menaim.
I thank my fellow co-chair, Her Excellency Dr. Shah Nasser, Minister of Investment and International Cooperation, Arab Republic of Egypt, for her remarks. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, We shall now hear presentation by our distinguished panelists. In order to allow as much time as possible for interactive discussion, I kindly request the panelists to limit their presentations to no more than 8 minutes. I now have the floor. I now have the privilege to give the floor to His Excellency Dongyu Ku, Vice Minister of Agriculture of China. You have the floor, sir.
Okay.
Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, good morning. It is a great pleasure to meet with my old friends and new friends here in the beautiful city of Buenos Aires to participate in the second high-level United Nations conference on South-South cooperation to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action. Distinguished friends, I would like to thank the government of Argentina for the very warm welcome and hospitality.
In Spanish, just thanks for the Argentina government for your well organization. Because 33 years ago was in Argentina and Peru and Chile when I was 22 years old. 22 años. Now I would like to speak Chinese. Because we have to use the UN language as much as possible. 40年后的今
40 years on, today we are back in the city of fair winds. We've come full circle to where it all began, and at the same time we are now on the scratch line of a new journey. In the context of the new international situation, the new development agenda, it is very important for us to take stock of the experience of South-South cooperation over the past 4 decades, share practices, and discuss the way forward to elevate and deepen South-South cooperation. The 40 years of opening up and reforming China have brought about major changes in China. I personally have visited many developing countries with our journalists and our experts to interact with the local farmers, working together to experiment and to learn from each other. We have sent over 30,000 agriculture experts and agro-technicians to more than 100 countries and trained over 50,000 agricultural professionals for developing countries. We have set up several SSC trust funds in collaboration with multiple international organizations. In 2015, our president announced the setup of South-South Cooperation Fund, and in FAU, we donated $80 million to set up a trust fund. We are ready to share our knowledge, our technology with other developing countries to tackle the challenges together and to implement the 2030 agenda so as to put an end to the global hunger and poverty. We'll do our part. I'd like to mention in particular the China FAO Uganda SSC project, which is a success story. We have sent many experts to provide assistance in food production, horticulture, aquaculture, animal husbandry, water management, and other areas. We transferred to the locals 80 agricultural techniques, introduced 82 improved crop varieties and animal breeds, and conducted over 160 training sessions. and the leaders of both countries, our President Mr. Xi Jinping and President Museveni, have sent written commendations. And there are many success stories like the one in Uganda, in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and the Caribbean. In many of the underdeveloped countries, we have invested our technology and our expertise. China does not just provide capacity training, capacity building, and technical assistance. We have opened up our market. Our market is the largest for farm produce in the world. 2 years ago, our president initiated China's first International Import Expo. So our market is going to be the largest. It is already the largest for farm produce. Yesterday, I met together with our vice premier. We met the leadership of Argentina, the host country. We expressed our readiness to work with Argentina to open up the market. So in the future, we will invite international community to come to the Chinese market so that our development becomes a dividend that all countries can partake of. As you know, China's e-commerce is fast moving forward. So we support the digitization of the rural economy within the G20 framework, FAO framework, and other frameworks. We are pushing ahead with the digitization of agriculture and rural economy. I think this is one thing that developing the world should pay more attention to in the future, so that you can roll out cross-border e-commerce and to bring more benefits to the farmers and smallholders. In November last year, Chinese government and FAO co-hosted the Ministerial Forum on Global SSC in Agriculture in Changsha of China. We adopted the Changsha Declaration, in which all parties proclaim their commitment to the principles of sincerity, practical results, affinity, and good faith, and the values of equality and shared benefits. The Ministry of Culture will continue to play our part to organize multinational corporations to promote South-South cooperation, the North-South cooperation, and the public-private partnership. I'd like to make 3 proposals. One, first is that we're committed to mutual respect and mutual assistance on equal footing. Countries of all sizes should do so on equal footing. And secondly, we should promote mutual benefit and win-win outcomes. So, as ever before, we will continue to do what we can to share our advanced technology with other developing countries. And the third priority is to advocate synergy and cooperation to benefit all players. So I hope that all developing countries, the governments, the private sector, and the civil society can work together to promote SSC. If we sing alone, we are singing solo, but we need a chorus, we need a symphony. There is a proverb in Africa: if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to go far, let's walk together. In the future belongs to all peoples of the world. Without the wealth of farmers, there will be no prosperity, no peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank His Excellency Dr. Dong Yu-Ku, Vice Minister of Agriculture of China, for his statement. Now I have the privilege to invite Dr. Rahman Nurduin, Deputy President of the Turkish Cooperation and Coordination Agency, TICA. You have the floor, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting me to attend this important panel. And I feel very much honored to address distinguished audience here today. As we are facing today growing unilateralism, protectionism, and various humanitarian crises in the wake of global financial crisis it is increasingly important that we empower partnerships for sustainable development. In this sense, increasing the scope and unleashing the potential of South-South cooperation is more important than ever today. One of the most important aspects of newly accepted SDG goals is that they have framed development beyond aid architecture based on South-South, North-South aid transfers, implying the end of traditional donor-recipient relationships. Our responsibility in this new developing environment is to give South-South cooperation actors more voice and more prominent role in global development cooperation, regardless of their position as providers or receivers. As far as experience is concerned, I would like to share my observation, our experience, Turkish experience with distinct audience here today. The first experience is about Somalia. We all know in 2011, in Somalia, there's very severe famine in Somalia, and Somalia is, except as a failed state, is a fragile state, it's almost forgotten by the whole world. And Turkish President, then Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he took his family, risked all their life, family's life, they just started a journey to Somalia when there's no guarantee on the ground, safety guarantee on the ground. And Turkish ODA started from 2011 to Somalia. And after the initial phase of humanitarian assistance, TICA took up the responsibility to set up schools, hospitals, to construct roads, and train the doctors, nurses in Somalia. So afterwards, the world realized there was a country called Somalia, and they started to set up embassies, and other NGOs just come up forward to assist Somalia. So this is the one example I'd like to share, because South-South cooperation basically, for me, from my understanding, is about solidarity, mutual respect, and respect for sovereignty. So second example is about Myanmar, Rohingya crisis in Myanmar. We all know, the Rohingya crisis has been taken for many years. And in the recent 5 years, it became even serious. And we feel the need to assist the Myanmar government to mitigate, to cope with this crisis. So we set an office in Yangon, and we try to build up roads, to support the people there to receive adequate medical treatment, and to reestablish the bamboo houses for the people, because their house just burned down by the rebels, whatever you call it, other groups. And again, example about Rohingya crisis. 2 years ago, roughly 700,000 people just they have to flee Myanmar, Rakhine State, to the other side of the border of Bangladesh, not far from the Cox's Bazar. One day's crisis took place 2 years ago. The wife of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu and his delegation, I'm personally, I was there, and to show solidarity with Bangladesh government. And he said, Bangladesh Foreign Minister, he was there as well. And we managed to bring to the food aid to the people. And later on, we, as TICA, we set up the hot meal stand there. And we managed to show our solidarity with Bangladesh government to help the Rohingya refugees there for 1 year, provide hot meal every day. And other Turkish institutions there, they set up mobile hospitals, and other, NGOs was there to help the people. So this second example. And for third example is just TICA, we have a history of 26 years. We set up in 1992. We are a newcomer in the development community. Turkey is the recipient country at the same time, while we are providing ODA. So we know the immediate needs of recipient, the partner countries. So more or less the projects are tailor-made, and although the size can be small, a small budget project, never mind, and it's quite welcome in many countries, especially LDC countries. We have 15 offices in LDC countries, mostly in African countries. So these are the experiences I would like to share, and I would like to share my observations about what the potentials of South-South cooperation. There is huge potential for South-South cooperation to complement the support of the developed countries. Bilateral, multilateral donors from North and international organizations, especially UN agencies, can play an important role to promote and facilitate this cooperation and make use of potential for the achievement of sustainable development goals. Today, Southern donors seem to have changed the status quo of the current development architecture, both in terms of discourse and practice. These donors may follow different paths in accordance with their own traditions and standards. However, we believe it should be the Southern actors themselves that should play the leading role in shaping the scope and boundaries of South-South cooperation. Southern providers increasingly offering recipient countries a new way of cooperation that places emphasis on notions of mutual benefit, respect for sovereignty, demand-driven, and no strings attached policies. South-South cooperation has important comparative advantages as a tool to foster development. However, it still faces important challenges in terms of evaluation and quantifications to achieve its full potential, such as establish specific procedures for evaluation, transparency, and mutual accountability, and systematizing and publish information collected at a national level. Now I would like to share some observations about Turkey's effort to strengthen South-South cooperation. In an attempt to find solutions to these challenges, Turkey has taken some important steps. The first meeting of the core group of Southern partners was held in Istanbul in 2013. By hosting this important event, Turkey took the initiative to support a Southern narrative and conceptual framework for South-South cooperation, which is a fast-evolving and dynamic process. Establishing formal platforms to engage some key new partners from the South in relevant regional forums provide an example in this regard. We as Turkey firmly believe that achieving the sustainable development goals requires finding and testing new ways of development cooperation. However, donor community do not necessarily need to rediscover new instruments and paradigms. As a matter of fact, what we need is to learn to be innovative in a way that we use already existing instruments and resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rahmanuddin, Deputy President of TICA. And I must say that when we had we gave shelter to 1.2 million persecuted, displaced Rohingya from Myanmar, Turkey's Prime Minister's wife and the team visited Bangladesh and have been helping ever since. Those Rohingya are still around and looking for some peaceful resolution. Now, I would like to invite Mr. George MOREIRA da Silva, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, to make his remarks. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Minister, dear co-chairs, distinguished members of the panel and this session. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the government of Argentina for hosting this very important event, but also for the remarkable outcome document. It's clearly an historical moment with the recognition of South-South cooperation, but also triangular cooperation. We are celebrating the fourth anniversary of the Buenos Aires Plan of Action in the year of the 2030 Agenda. Linking BAPA of the 1978 with the 2030 Agenda invite us to rethink the global development cooperation agenda, bearing in mind that all countries have expertise to offer and all countries can learn from the experience of others. In this regard, international cooperation dynamics and modalities are constantly evolving. The face of development has changed. On the one hand, the 82 countries are going at a faster rate than OECD members. South-South cooperation has mobilized very significant resources, but what is more invaluable and difficult to quantify is the knowledge and expertise around similar development challenges shared among countries of the South. On the other hand, I can assure you that the members of the OECD Development Assistance Committee are committed to maintain their support for engaging in effective development partnerships. In 2017, ODA reached $147 billion, and ODA has steadily increased in the last 2 decades, being quite resilient even to the financial crisis and the backlash to multilateralism. But we are working beyond ODA and beyond at OECD. That's why we recently developed new methodologies and new mechanisms to mobilize private sector. In one hand, we agreed on blended finance principles for the SDGs, but we also developed a new framework for social impact investment and climate finance. We know that it's not just about going from billions to trillions, it's shifting the trillions, ensuring that these trillions can have an impact promoting better policies for better lives. We need South-South and North-South. In fact, we need more of both. Moreover, we need to think about the synergies and complementarities. As such, triangular cooperation is a transformative modality that builds on the comparative advantages of different development partners to bring innovative and flexible solutions to fast-changing development challenges. Triangular cooperation responds well to requirements of the 2030 Agenda. It has proven to be a mechanism that brings together different perspectives and incorporates the diversity and multiplicity of today's development stakeholders, including from the private sector, civil society, philanthropy, academia, and subnational actors. That's why we consider that the recognition of the triangular cooperation per se in the outcome document corresponds to a concrete success of this conference. Sharing experiences, best practices, and success stories is the title of this session. My plea is, in this regard, is that we need more exchange among southern and northern partners. We need to transcend the divides of our communities and promote innovative mechanisms of development cooperation that are complementary to traditional frameworks and that contribute to the provision of global public goods. Different global platforms encourage knowledge sharing, including the Global Partnership on Effective Development Cooperation. We have also been working with the members of the Global Partnership Initiative on Effective Triangular Cooperation to compile a report on triangular cooperation in the era of 2030 Agenda. This report was launched yesterday in a side event organized by this GPI. The report identifies key messages on triangular cooperation along the sub-themes of the BAPA+40. We look forward to partnering with all of you and to continue supporting the UN system in the follow-up of the BAPA+40, for instance, through the Global Partnership Initiative on Effective Triangular Cooperation, gathering evidence to scale up innovation and partnerships, and working with countries to help strengthening their system for South-South and triangular cooperation. But let me highlight another example of collaboration and partnership that can result from these joint efforts. I'm mentioning the TOTSD, the Total Official Support for Sustainable Development. This new methodology aims to fill the knowledge gap about broader financial flows and international cooperation for sustainable development, in line with Addis Ababa Action Agenda, the 2030 Agenda, and the Paris Agreement. TOTSD will complement and not replace ODA. Contrary to ODA, it is a recipient-focused measure responding to the need of developing countries to scrutinize and better plan support they receive from broader sources, both bilateral and multilateral. It provides a methodology for measuring external resources, both financial flows and in-kind technical cooperation, in a comparable manner. As such, TOTSD aims to fully recognize the contribution of South-South and triangular cooperation to development. This methodology has been developed by an international task force in an open, inclusive and transparent manner, including both OECD and developing countries. And we have benefited from the contribution in this platform from Philippines, Senegal, South Africa, Tunisia, Colombia, Mexico, Costa Rica, Ghana, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Timor-Leste, but also as observers, Brazil and China. Now that we have developed these methodologies, we will now test in a data survey and country pilot studies. But the door is still very much open to make adjustments. We therefore invite you, your engagement in this international task force. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jorge MOREIRA da Silva of OECD. Now I have the privilege to invite Ms. Cornelia Reicher, Vice President of the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. You have the floor, Madam.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure for me and an honor to represent here the RBAs, the Rome-based agencies, namely FAO, WFP, the World Food Programme, and my own organization, the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And I'm happy to share, on behalf also of my colleagues of these three organizations, our particular perception on the relevance and also the potential and the upcoming challenges for South-South cooperation in future. I think this particular conference provides the opportunity in strengthening partnerships, in reflecting on our achievements, but also looking into upcoming challenges. First of all, I would like to share with you, we have witnessed an emerging significance of South-South cooperation in the last decades. And this is well reflected also by an upcoming demand and an increasing demand for our particular services, which can be provided from the Rome-based agencies, particularly with regard to agricultural challenges. I think it's not by chance that nowadays, complementary to North-South cooperation, the countries of the South, due to their natural congruity, are looking for the adequate platforms in order to exchange experiences and to find the right and appropriate and also affordable ways in order to exchange experiences and to find the adequate solutions. And looking particularly at the challenges for agriculture, I think South-South cooperation has turned out to be a very forceful tool in this regard to provide these kind of solutions, not only with regard to transboundary actions when it comes to tackling with climate change, but also when it comes to increasing agricultural productivity, offering opportunities for the rural youth in terms of employment and also in terms of empowering women, which play a major role in order to strengthen rural economies. Rural production, rural transformation, and environmental sustainability will become even more central to the development discourse. We've seen, with regard to the 2030 agenda, that there are only 11 years left for us, for the international community, in order to ensure that we tackle the issue of hunger and poverty. And with regard to hunger and malnutrition, we have to acknowledge that there are still 821 million people suffering from hunger and malnutrition. So for those people, we have to find the right solutions and we also have to acknowledge that there are upcoming challenges in terms of political fragility, but also in terms of climate change, which will aggravate this situation in the next years to come. It is estimated that by 2030, the cost of climate change and air pollution combined will rise to 3.2% of global GDP, which the world's least developed countries forecast to bear the brunt, suffering losses of up to 11% of their GDP. Moreover, the rural-urban migration will continue in all developing nations, creating a dilemma whereby fewer rural producers must feed ever-increasing numbers of urban consumers. All these developments will make it challenging in all its forms to achieve SDG 2. However, solutions do exist, and they are quite promising. And in this regard, I would like to share with you that the Rome-based agencies have embedded South-South cooperation as a very strong tool and complementary aid modality in all its strategies and also in its organizational structure. So we do have dedicated corporate structures and units working for this particular topic. FAO, for instance, has been a major facilitator of SSTC in the areas of food security, nutrition, sustainable agriculture and rural development since 1996, mobilizing over 360 million in support of SSTC projects for agriculture. In 2012, a specific unit dedicated to SSTC was set up. In 2019, an Office of South-South and Triangular Cooperation was established, and today SSTC is fully mainstreamed as a delivery mechanism within the organizations of 5 strategic objectives. With regard to IFAD, I would also like to share with you that it was only recently that we embedded SSTC in our overall strategic framework and that we launched a particular facility with the support of the Chinese government of an initial 10 million, which will provide ample opportunities also to provide solutions for our member states who are interested in South-South cooperations. Since 2015, the World Food Programme has had a policy on SSTC in place, guiding the organization's work at national, regional, and global levels. And today, 62% of WFP's country offices are engaged in brokering and supporting host governments on South-South initiatives with WFP, and more than 30 countries receive continuous direct and remote SSTC support from WFC Center of Excellence in Brazil. There is even more in future because the RBAs have agreed that there will be a joint roadmap on SSTC towards BAPA+40. And this has increased in additional activities in organizing major events and also co-implementation of projects on the ground and in also collaboration on common products, as, for example, a methodology in order to measure the impact of South-South cooperation. We are all aware that this is not an easy topic, but we would like to ensure that particularly for the upcoming challenges in the agricultural sector and for the agricultural agenda, we do have ample evidence so that we can mobilize more resources. There are a lot of experience which can be changed, and there are a lot of positive examples. Methodologies are one part of it, but providing these kind of learning experiences, as IFAD has done it for many countries, organizing learning route methodologies and educational journeys which bring together countries from different areas in order to learn how appropriate irrigation schemes can look like, how digital solutions can foster agricultural productivity. I think these are very encouraging examples in the future. And we've done this in almost all parts of the world, in Africa, in Latin America, as well as in the ASEAN. In FAO, South-South cooperation has evolved from being a delivery mechanism within its special program for food security, which began in 1994, to today being a central pillar of the organization's work. The FAO supports the identification, transfer, adaptation, and scaling up of development solutions. These exchanges occur through multiple means, often through projects using a diverse number of modalities, such as development of short and long-term experts, policy dialogues, and technology exchanges. Through the FAO China Trust Fund, projects, for example, has facilitated the transfer of over 450 practical agricultural technologies, tested over 300 varieties of crops, and designed and introduced over 200 sets of machinery tools. I could go on and on with these examples, but I don't want to stress too much our timetable here. Let me end by saying that there is also a common perception with regard to the upcoming challenges we are facing with regard to the agricultural agenda. And there is a common perception that we can only master this if we really increase our databases. This is a basic lesson learned for development cooperation. Unless we don't have empirical evidence on impact on the ground with regard to our activities, it will be very difficult also with upcoming negotiations with all our donor countries that we can mobilize additional resources. And we all agree that mobilizing additional resources will be key in order to enhance and to expand this ambitious agenda. Even more, talking about additional resources, I think we should also include the know-how of international financial institutions, not only of IFAD, but also of regional banks, of the World Bank. And we also do see the necessity of the private sector in order to provide even better access, not only to markets, to technology, and also to additional funds. I hope with this kind of perception, I've given you a broad outline what is lying ahead of us. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
I would like to thank Ms. Cornelia Reicher, Vice President of IFAD, for her statement. Now I have the privilege to request our last panelist in the list, Mr. ENRIQUE MARURI, Director, Advocacy and Campaigns, Oxfam. And you have the floor.
So thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to speak in Spanish since we haven't used that language in that session, so I think it's an important time to speak in Spanish. Primero que todo, quisiera...
To begin with, I'd like to begin my presentation by thanking the Argentine government and the UN Office for South-South Cooperation and the other organizers of this event for inviting us here. We really do value the fact that there is a space here for organizations representing the civil society and that they've given us a lot of time to work on these matters. In Oxfam, we take this as an acknowledgement of our humble but constant work to generate evidence and foster cooperation for development that is better quality and that really is people-centered. For me personally, it's a very exciting time because I've dedicated a great part of my life to achieving South-South cooperation that adds value, that is truly based on collaboration and mutual learning. And to have the opportunity to speak here at this high-level conference really is marvelous. Working today for civil society, moreover, gives me certain legitimacy to speak independently about the challenges, advantages, and opportunities offered by South-South and triangular cooperation. And as Jorge was saying, we believe that it's important that we include triangular cooperation because it has been increasing significantly. Allow me to begin my remarks by talking about the South, the great protagonist of South-South cooperation. Is there a South? And who is the South? Who do we mean by the South? Reality has shown us that there are many Souths that are as diverse and heterogeneous as possible. And these Souths have, furthermore, experienced various realities over the last few years, some very positive and others not so much. But we believe that it's very important to recognize that there is a very broad diversity within the South. Within countries of the South, moreover, we continue to see enormous gaps, as we heard yesterday in the presentation of the Economic Outlook report of Latin America that was presented by ECLAC and the OECD. And these gaps exist, and they have widened in many countries, between countries and within countries. And this means that the transition of these countries to the development process is very different. And this means that the experiences of people can vary greatly, even though they're only living a few hundred kilometers from each other. What's true is that this diversity is the very essence of South-South cooperation, and it is very important that we build on this diversity. This diversity is elemental. Over the last few years, over the last 25 years, around 1 billion people have been lifted out of poverty. And these figures go up and down, but there is a recognition that mankind has made progress in lifting people out of poverty, around a seventh of the world population. That's a significant figure. And this transformative capacity, particularly in urban areas, but also in rural areas, is another comparative advantage of South-South cooperation. People, the persons that have been lifted out of the trap of poverty. This is another advantage of South-South cooperation, people and their transformative capacity. The next point is the increase of resources invested in South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation is very important, because I think that we need to recognize that traditional donors and providers have identified the strengths of South-South cooperation and have designed tools that can still be fine-tuned, but triangular cooperation is that. It's an effort for traditional donors to adopt the practices of South-South cooperation and to learn from the South. And these resources are very important. It's very important to recognize that there are more resources, but I'll make some comments on this later because it's still very concentrated among public stakeholders, and to further boost this, we need to open up these opportunities. But these resources and the learning that we have generated through South-South cooperation to generate partnerships is another great strength. Because, as Mario Pezzini was saying in his statement yesterday, concepts such as aid and donors have lost their strength, because today we talk instead of collaboration and partnerships. And this is very important. Organizations perhaps have always moved more slowly than South-South cooperation itself. So in relation to the questions raised by the co-chairs, there are three elements in my response: diversity, the transformative capacity of people, and innovative and adaptive partnerships, which is an asset of South-South cooperation on which it's very important that we build. But we're not immune from challenges, and I will now refer to some of these. The first challenge is inequality. Inequality is, without doubt, a time bomb. Today, 26 people possess the same wealth as half the population of the world. 26 people possess the same wealth as 3.6 billion people. And that's a very significant figure. There could be debates that the calculation isn't well done, etc. But even if it's 2,000 people, this continues to be an astonishing figure. And the tax systems, instead of competing to become more effective in reducing poverty, compete rather to bestow greater advantages and benefits on companies. And this is another reality that we're tackling. That's inequality. The next challenge is climate change. And it's not only what could happen in the future, but rather what is happening today, because there are countries such as Niger, Chad, and Burkina Faso that are already living the consequences of climate change. They're not just looking ahead to address the challenges of climate change. They are already suffering the consequences of climate change, because the advance of the desert and droughts are every day forcing thousands of people from their territories every day, or obliging them to migrate. And what is also happening in Central America or Honduras, there are many people who are part of these groups of migrants. And when you ask them why they decided to join these caravans of migrants, they say that, well, there wasn't any water, any rain on my farmland, so I had to leave. But that's another thing that we need to bear in mind. Another topic is migration, and that's a gigantic challenge. Migration is a public good. We have always, as human beings, been on the move. And there are ways to perceive migration as an asset or rather as a threat. And some people have decided to make it into a threat. And they've decided, moreover, to use cooperation for development to contain migrant populations, which is called the externalization of borders. And this is distorting the way in which we invest in cooperation for development. Another factor is gender justice. This is something that hasn't been mentioned sufficiently during this event from my perspective. Yesterday, for example, the director of the Andean Development Corporation was talking about productivity gaps in Latin America. And he was asking for innovative, transformative things to be done, different things. Our invitation is that we work, for example, to break the gender labor gap with specific initiatives through the exchange of experiences. Because today, at a global level, and according to analysis that we've carried out in Oxfam, men earn 23% more than women, simply on the basis of circumstances that are not explained by our qualifications. And this is discrimination. This is something that also affects productivity. But there are also other fields, such as gender-based violence, which truly is a pandemic. Every day, today, according to United Nations figures, 137 women are murdered at the hands of their partners or a member of their families every day around the world. And this is a tragic figure which speaks to the impact that it would have on development. And I'd like to close my presentation by pointing to three matters which, from our perspective, should be promoted and boosted following and the aftermath of this conference. The first is funding. South-South cooperation continues to face limitations in terms of the funding that it can access, or the funding that can be accessed by certain stakeholders. It's still focused on governmental activities, and if we believe in the transformative capacity of people in South-South cooperation, we need to involve more civil society organizations, the private sector, academia, so that we really can boost the transformative role of South-South cooperation. Secondly, women's leadership. I'm delighted that on this panel, the panel is quite balanced in terms of the participation of men and women, and we do have one female co-chair. But that's not always the case. And decision-making processes and policy debates haven't always granted so much space to women. And that's important because their involvement in policy making is crucial to ensuring South-South cooperation is a success. Thirdly, we need to connect more and better with social organizations to build innovative agendas for change. And I've been particularly impressed by what's been happening with this girl, Greta Thunberg, who appeared before the Swedish parliament to ask for governments to take measures on climate change. And she has generated a social movement, a significant social movement. And cooperation should support this type of process. These are so transformative, they're so transparent, and they respond from clamors from the population, and it would be marvelous if we could find ways to support these transformative processes. There are many organizations, and we work with many of them, with enormous potential, and they only need a little bit of profile, visibility, and support to be truly transformative. And I'll close talking about knowledge. We've heard from this panel about this and in various other discussions here. It's very important that we strengthen knowledge and generate knowledge, not only for marketing and so that every institution or country can showcase its projects and its added value, but so that we meet our goals and so that we can measure the best way of building partnerships, so that we truly do generate debates about what is the best or most appropriate way of investing. I know examples. I'm Colombian, for example. In Colombia, we have an initiative which is being exhibited in a show here, and this is a good example because it gives an opportunity to academia to participate. Or, for example, the report on South-South cooperation in Latin America, which is today the main instrument, for measuring and quantifying South-South cooperation in Latin America. We need to step up and continue this type of initiative. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I spoke for too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enrique Maruri, Director Advocacy and Campaigns, Oxfam Intermom, now for his statement. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the floor is now open for an interactive discussion. Participants wishing to take the floor are requested to press the button on their consoles. In order to ensure maximum participation, intervention should not exceed more than 3 minutes. I repeat, 3 minutes. To facilitate the interactive nature of discussion, delegations are encouraged not to deliver prepared statements. To assist speakers in this regard, a timer has been installed on the screen. When the clock signifies that the 3 minutes have been exhausted, speakers are kindly requested to conclude their statements. When necessary, the co-chairs will remind speakers when they have exceeded their time limit. I thank you for your cooperation. I would like to recall that pursuant to General Assembly Resolution 71/318, the conference, including the panel discussions, will be open to participation by representatives of all participating states, intergovernmental organizations, relevant entities of the United Nations system, accredited civil society organizations, and other stakeholders. We'll make every effort to ensure that each category of participants is given the opportunity to speak, time permitting. I now give the floor to, we have a list. However, we have a list, but anyone wants to speak, they can raise their countries. But first in the list I have is Mr. Nofrizal, Principal Secretary, National Population and Family Planning Board of Indonesia. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the panelists for their presentation on these important matters. Indonesia believes there is still room for southern countries to learn from and assist each other, as we have a relatively close development level. This also contributes to a faster learning process. Indonesia, in this regard, has developed South-South cooperation programs based on Indonesian potential and best practice. We focus on development, economy, social welfare, and good governance. To date, Indonesia has conducted more than 500 programs with 6,000 participants from fellow developing countries. Indonesia is also taking an active role in the emerging issues for developing countries, including population, family planning, and family development. We are glad to report that Indonesia is in collaboration with the UNFPA and Population Partner Development has hosted inter-ministerial conference on South-South and triangular cooperation, emerging population and development issues influencing the 2030 agenda just last year, which produced Bali Call for Action. In this regard, we are open for collaboration on the field of adolescent reproductive health and life skill for young generation as we, fellow southern countries, are facing the challenge of demographic dividend. We would also like to bring forward the programs on Families Life Circle program, as we believe that development is started at home. We would like to take this opportunity to reaffirm Indonesia's commitment to strengthen South-South and triangular cooperation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your statement. Allow me to move now to the speaker from Nigeria, Mr. Pius Osnikiani, the Director General and CEO of the Nigerian Directorate of Technical Aid Corporation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the co-chair. I wish to express our appreciation for being invited to participate in this conference. Nigeria as a country believes solidly and is an active participant in South-South cooperation. And to this effect, Nigeria has established a body under an enabling act of parliament that is responsible for dispensing aids, technical assistance to recipient countries. And so, our success stories are quite numerous. For example, about 5 days ago, 10 professors were sent from Nigeria to the Republic of Gambia to start the Faculty of Dental Surgery. And I also want to reiterate that the first Vice Chancellor of the University of Gambia also was from the Directorate of Technical Aid Corps, including a number of judges and justices of the High Court provided by Nigeria. Let me also reiterate that Nigeria believes that we can learn and share experiences from other participants in the South-South cooperation. And it is our firm belief that indeed as we go on, we continue to share experiences and we continue to also learn from our mistakes. One of the key challenges that we have is that we have not been able to build a composite base, a composite database for this flow of assistance. And I do hope that in this conference, we will be able to debate this the more. Once again, let me reiterate that Nigeria reaffirms its commitment to South-South cooperation and that whatever direction in which this organization will go, Nigeria is willing to partner along. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a concise statement. And now let me give the floor to Guinea, who's actually the co-chair for panel 3. The floor is yours. Go.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. I, on behalf of the Ghanaian delegation, would like to talk about 3 guidelines of the G77 and China, guidelines that govern South-South cooperation. It is perceived as cooperation between people of the South and is the expression of South-South solidarity. And it is also considered as a strategy to help economic independence based on solidarity and shared objectives. South-South cooperation does not replace North-South cooperation. Strengthening South-South cooperation should not be something that seeks to compensate the fact that developed countries have less interest in assisting developing countries. South-South cooperation strives to bolster multilateralism as part of a pragmatic approach dealing with the issues of development. In order to facilitate this, there are these recommendations that need to be made. Donor countries to the South need to build the productive capacity of South countries. They need to bolster national capacity, deal with the fragmentation of aid to South countries. They need to open up markets to large countries in the North and thus help South countries in a predictable, lasting way. And there must be a stop to pitting the South against the North. There needs to be transparency. Corruption needs to be combated, as does the diversion of aid. And the forces of the South need to be brought together. There's a need to ensure accountability by having that at the heart of development policies. This pertains to the accountability of beneficiary countries and also promoting accountability between them and the donor countries. This principle should help to bolster the legitimacy of developing countries by enabling citizens to get more involved in policy development and by focusing on results. Setting up transparent and strong national institutions and developing statistics on assistance is going to be very helpful. So that is really what the Ghanaian delegation wanted to make as a contribution to our work. We do hope that this will help to strengthen the institutional framework that we all so desire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me now move to the intergovernmental organizations and give them the floor, and then go back to member countries. The floor is now for the Fund for the Development of the Indigenous Peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean. The floor is yours.
Para los indígenas.
For indigenous peoples, the holding of this international forum on South-South cooperation and the Sustainable Development Goals is particularly relevant, among other reasons because it allows us to insist on the fact that indigenous peoples have proposals and practices, traditional knowledge, and forms of using such knowledge, which represent specific and real contributions to address the major challenges facing mankind for sustainable development. With a total of 826 peoples and a population estimated at 45 million, approximately 10% of the total population of the region, Latin America is the continent with the highest level of indigenous demography in the world. Indigenous peoples represent a large share of the cultural diversity of the world, and particularly of our continent. Forms of living, thinking, and practices which lead to different responses to the problems, needs, and challenges facing mankind. The very survival of these millennial cultures demonstrates its indigenous peoples' remarkable ability to coexist in their environment and their resilience to endless problems suffered in the past and now. We must therefore underscore the significance of indigenous culture and their traditional knowledge to help us to find new relevant solutions in the path to sustainable development and in the path to living well. Fortunately, we have an enormous quantity of contributions from the traditional knowledge of our peoples on infinite areas such as agricultural production, food, the environment, irrigation, use of natural resources, medicine, etc. Therefore, it's key that we consider the development of South-South cooperation, both within state institutions and indigenous peoples, both directly between peoples and indigenous communities in countries and even different continents. We are staunch supporters of this, and therefore the Fund for the Development of Indigenous Peoples in Latin America and the Caribbean, FILAC, supports the regional plan for the implementation of the rights of indigenous peoples that states and representative of indigenous peoples agreed on in 2018. This is cooperation carried out in terms of epistemological, social and political respect and equality, and this is an open door to notable progress not only for indigenous peoples but also for the population of the whole continent and the entire world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your statement, and allow me now to give the floor to our colleague from Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on a very distinguished panel. Actually, my question was inspired from the intervention made by our Turkish colleague, Mr. Rahman, about the Turkish contributions to the refugees from Rakhine state. My question will be how we can institutionalize this cooperation and using the South-South cooperation to help supporting the resilience of hosting communities, refugees communities, in especially in the countries in the region, and how can we also support and help these people in a post-conflict era for their voluntarily return to their countries once these conflicts might end. Of course, this is a question to Mr. Rahman and the other panelists as well. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Now allow me to give the floor to our colleague from South Africa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me start off by acknowledging that valuable lessons have been learned on implementing South-South cooperation initiatives, and the road ahead must build on these lessons and experiences, particularly in terms of models that are appropriate. South Africa reiterates its commitment and support to strengthen and advance cooperation in science, technology, and innovation in support of the 2030 Agenda, particularly in matters where we talk about equitable access to decent services that are critical for the quality of life, for example, SDG 6 on water and sanitation and others. South Africa would also like to emphasize that cooperation in science, technology, innovation needs to acknowledge the heterogeneity and the different levels of development of the Global South, and that cooperation itself should strengthen existing capacities and address gaps in capacity, human capacity and infrastructure in line with national and regional development objectives. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me now to give the floor to our colleagues from Canada. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the other members of the panel. Canada agrees that broad and inclusive partnerships are central to the achievement of the 2030 Agenda and leaving no one behind. There is much for us to learn from the experiences of South-South and triangular cooperation to reach these goals. The adoption of the 2030 Agenda marked a momentous occasion and recognized that development needs to be people-centered and that our efforts to spur economic growth are connected to our efforts to reverse environmental degradation and linked to our efforts to eliminate poverty and inequality. Canada is working closely with all partners to advance a contemporary, multi-stakeholder approach to triangular cooperation through a platform that shares experiences best Dugu partnership is an important example of a multi-stakeholder initiative that brings together governments, philanthropic foundations, and international organizations. Canada joined in 2017, and we're working with Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Senegal, and Togo. So we're pleased to be included in this strong financial commitment that advances family planning to reach an additional 2.2 million modern contraceptive users by 2020. So having clear targets and impact will be important in this space. So, and also innovation and co-creation, joint learning will be an important part of this modality that is so important, as we've heard in today's panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, allow me to give the floor to the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. The floor is yours.
Is it on? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I represent here UNEC, which stands for United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, one of the 5 regional commissions of United Nations. And UNEC covers 56 member states in the Europe and Central Asian region. 2 of UNEC examples were showcased in the good practices in South-South and triangular cooperation for sustainable development. And I would like to briefly speak about one of them, which is EPR, Environmental Performance Review, and how this review contributes to South-South and triangular cooperation. In the countries of Global South in the UNEC region, the environmental agenda is rarely on the priority list, and this situation leads to weak environmental institutions and inadequate environmental policies. EPR, or Environmental Performance Review, is an assessment of the progress a country has made in reconciling its environmental and economic targets and in meeting its international environmental commitments. It is a voluntary exercise which is carried out based on the request from countries. The EPR recommendations receive due consideration by the countries and implemented accordingly, and countries also report on its implementation during the subsequent cycle. Environmental performance reviews represent a mechanism for the systemic transfer of good practices between countries, and this transfer takes place through peer learning process. The review mission, the EPR review mission team is composed of experts from different countries and international organizations, and they work together during the preparation, field mission, and report writing. And this provides an opportunity to experts exchange knowledge, experience, and good practices. It also helps to create future collaboration between countries and experts following the mission. The draft reports are also reviewed by peer experts and discussed with the representatives of the country that are undertaking EPRs. The similar challenges and situation in the reviewed country trigger discussions on the solutions which will be beneficial to all countries. And the last but not least, the UNEC Committee on Environmental Policy, which has 56 member states, brings international peer learning dimension to EPR exercise. The recommendations are discussed and further refined through comprehensive review by committee members, and country which is under the review benefits from a broad international expertise. Environmental performance reviews contribute to the improved policy and legal frameworks and integration of environmental objectives into sectoral policies. Therefore, EPR provides a good opportunity to facilitate South and triangular cooperation, and which ultimately contributes to positive environmental outcomes by strengthening countries' capacities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now we move to our colleague, Her Excellency from Cuba.
Gracias.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you for allowing me to participate, and I just wanted to share the experience of good practices that Cuba has been able to benefit from through South-South cooperation. We've been able to share with countries of the region matters related to climate change and disaster risk reduction, which we are very vulnerable to due to our geographical location. We've developed a system of knowledge, tools that have been validated to reduce disaster risk and adapt to climate change in planning our development. We have considered that there are 3 topics that we have been working on, and these are ensuring better scientific knowledge and including this in cooperation for development in different sectors and territories. We've been stepping up the disaster risk reduction efforts as well, and here we've developed a good practice, and through South-South cooperation we have participated with various countries in the region, above all in the Caribbean and Central America, in strengthening early warning systems and on sharing vulnerability and risk analyses, as well as looking at capacity building of specialists in these countries, so that people within these countries are able to recognize their own vulnerabilities and how to address these, both in terms of climate change and their vulnerabilities that they face today. For example, we have an example in Haiti and in the Dominican Republic, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and another in St. Lucia and Dominica. These are all sorts of countries that we've been cooperating with, and Cuba would like to reiterate that in as much as possible, we would like to continue to share our good practices with such countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for a concise statement. Allow me now to give the floor to the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. The floor is yours.
Madam President, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen.
Microphone for the speaker, please.
I thank you for the opportunity to brief the work of the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism to promote South-South and triangular cooperation. We are pleased to be part of this conference, which is an important milestone in the creation of a collaborative path forward. Promoting South-South cooperation is a key priority of the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. The devastating impacts of terrorism and violent extremism continue to be borne most heavily by those living in developing countries. 10 countries accounted for 84% of all deaths from terrorism in 2017, and all of these were from the Global South. The United Nations Office of Counterterrorism is fully committed to harnessing the immense power and potential of the South to combat terrorism and violent extremism. We are exploring ways of mainstreaming and integrating South-South cooperation into United Nations counterterrorism capacity-building technical support to member states. We are identifying and sharing innovative and successful Southern-generated policies and initiatives which respond to the specific challenges faced by developing countries in tackling terrorism and violent extremism. But we want to scale up these efforts with your support. As a newcomer in the field of South-South and triangular cooperation, this conference provides an opportunity to learn and initiate new partnerships. The United Nations Office of Counterterrorism recently launched a global program to promote the exchange of expertise and strengthen institutional and technical capacities to counter terrorism and prevent violent extremism between selected countries from Africa, Asia, Middle East, Latin America, and the Caribbean. This program will include the mapping and identification of relevant best practices in counterterrorism, prevention of violent extremism, and the development of an online knowledge-sharing platform that will be connected to existing South-South related platforms, the establishment of a forum of experts, and the publication of a handbook on global South best practices in tackling terrorism and violent extremism. I therefore invite, on behalf of the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism, the members of the South, member states of the South, to work with us in sharing their knowledge and experience in addressing the transnational and evolving threat of terrorism and help build a more secure and prosperous future for us all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now allow me to give the floor to the Office of the United Nations Commission for Human Rights, Saad Al-Farad.
Now, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I'm honored to be here with you today in my capacity as United Nations Special Rapporteur on the right to development, appointed by the UN Human Rights Council in March 2017. The expansion of South-South partnership reflects not only the accumulation of experience, knowledge, and resource in the Global South, but also the importance of South-South cooperation as an opportunity to join forces in finding solutions to common development challenges. Indeed, the internationally agreed policy documents of 2015 provide new momentum for South-South cooperation as a means to realize the right to development and as an important complement to other forms of cooperation for achieving inclusive and sustainable development for all nations, peoples, and individuals. In my thematic report to the UN General Assembly of last October, I examined some of the key challenges and opportunities of South-South cooperation. I found that South-South cooperation holds much promise for the future as its conceptual framework embodies many of the principles enshrined in the right to development, such as respect for equality, mutual benefit, inclusiveness, participation, and national ownership. However, its potential and positive impact could be leveraged even further if states and other stakeholders incorporate a right to development perspectives into the design, financing, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of South-South cooperation process. To illustrate the benefits of such an approach, my report provides some concrete examples of promising practices
that show how South-South cooperation can effectively advance sustainable development, human rights, and the implementation of the 2015 policy documents. For example, South-South cooperation can make vital contributions with regard to the creation of a new multi-stakeholder partnerships for sustainable development, the sharing and replication of good practices, and the development of innovative, cost-effective, and context-specific solutions to emerging development challenges such as climate change. While recognizing that South-South cooperation takes many forms, my report identifies some elements of good practices that should be considered when analyzing South-South cooperation through a right-to-development lens. One of the key elements in the emphasis on the principles of inclusiveness, non-discrimination, and equality, so as to ensure that those who are lagging behind are given special attention and that all individuals and communities can effectively participate in and benefit from South-South partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the participants from the China Institute for South-South Cooperation in Agriculture. The floor is yours. So if the participant is not here in the room, then we can move to the environment, UNEP, the representative from UNEP. Who's currently in the seat 177.
Please, thank you. I'm Leo Heilemann, the Regional Director for Latin American Caribbean of the United Nations Environment Program. South-South cooperation is key to the work that we do. We work in most member states, and it's integrated into our program of work. We have over 70 projects on South-South cooperation. I just wish to share some lessons learned and some orientation for the future. Lessons learned. It is important that partnerships and relationships consider cooperants' priorities and needs, including cultural understanding. Broadening the partnerships encourages increased ownership and hence greater potential for impact and success. The importance of sustainability of program cooperation and potential incorporation into the national system is key for continued success. Agreed standards in relation to finance and investment is important. This creates a level playing field and avoids misunderstandings. Subnational cooperation promotes wider national participation and involvement, particularly with targeted interventions. Capacities have to be strengthened in order to have better appreciation of the challenges and impacts, and participants being able to identify and initiate solutions. The use of small technical working groups supports core implementation. Flexibility with interventions reduces impediments imposed by rigid programmatic structures. Involvement of small and medium enterprises greatly increase program impact at the national level. Linking data users and producers ensure that successful data is collected. Now some 3 suggestions and issues maybe for the panel. 1, we need some system to monitor and provide information on South-South cooperation. A worldwide database that is accessible to all. This can be achieved through Ministries of Foreign Affairs providing their registered South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation to a central platform. An example of this is the system managed by the Ibero-America Conference. They have a booth here in the next room, and you can see examples of reports on this. There's also a need for dedicated resources for South-South and triangular cooperation, which have a particular objective of encouraging and promoting such cooperation among countries. There's also South-South cooperation that is not governmental, but private sector, civil society, and NGOs. The question is, how can this be encouraged and the information and data captured and made available for all? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now allow me to give the floor to our colleague from OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the GCG Director. The floor is yours. Yes, please. If our panelists can make the interventions, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much, Enrico. Mr. George, you want to go ahead, please?
Yes. Thank you.
The floor is yours.
I'd like to quickly react to some of the comments made specifically on the need to collect more data, and we really think that the work that has been developed through the Global Partnership Initiative on effective triangle cooperation is clearly outlining this data collection and also sharing knowledge from 100 projects. Yesterday we presented a report that resulted from the contribution from 44 members through 100 projects, providing clear lessons to be learned, and I think that we need to address this more systematically. The second point that I would like to comment, it's the point made by UNEP on developing a system to monitor. Clearly, this outcome document from this BAPA+40 provides a call for action for accountability, for comparability, and to develop joint efforts to monitor the efforts both from South-South and triangle cooperation. We don't think that the TOTSD is a silver bullet, but I really think that this new methodology that is being developed in an inclusive, transparent, and open manner, and we hope that one day it will be hosted at UN level, really provides the ability to monitor all cross-border flows, regardless the constitutionality level. It is focused on the recipient and not on the input provided by any donor, being the North or being the South. And finally, it also includes the contribution to global public goods. So I would say that through this methodology that we are now reviewing through pilots, but also through a survey, we think that it can be a good solution for the call for action through this BAPA+40 to better monitor our joint efforts, knowing that there are different approaches. As you know, co-chair, we don't think, we are not advocating to standardize through a DAC lens. The TOTSD, it's totally different. It's beyond ODA. There is no target, and it includes as well in-kind and technical assistance contribution. It was precisely due to the fact that several developing countries took part of the task force that immediately the task force agreed to include not only the traditional financial flows, but also in-kind cooperation and technical assistance in the methodology. So I hope that when we have the review and the survey presented by June, July, this can be also useful for additional discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George, for speaking on behalf of OECD. And let me now give the floor to the representative from Latin American Economic Systems. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, or Co-Chair, for giving me the floor. CELA is an intergovernmental organization of regional character with 26 member countries from Latin America and the Caribbean. It's therefore an organization of the South, and it carries out South-South cooperation. And it basically carries out a few projects that are of great benefit for member countries. And the good benefit for these countries is that we understand the impact of South-South cooperation on various sectors. In summary, I can say that after several years of working with member countries and of disseminating good practices, we've remarked that we need to strengthen South-South cooperation, according to our experience, at 3 levels. Firstly, we need to promote the diversification of sources of funding, but not only public funding, but rather also private, international and national sources of funding. This is an important point that will bolster South-South cooperation. Secondly, we must facilitate the interaction and follow-up to the levels of implementation at a national level, sub-national level, and a local level. Normally, South-South cooperation occurs at a governmental and national level, and unfortunately, the most pressing shortages or lacks are suffered at a local level. Finally, we need to incentivize the expansion of South-South cooperation with relevant involved stakeholders that, in addition to the government, include the private sector, civil society, among others. And from now on, we will have a paradigm for South-South cooperation in which the multi-actor component is fundamental, and that's the great difference that we have now compared to BAPA 40 years ago. Now, in closing, in terms of successful experiences, we have a public-private partnership where the private sector plays an important role together with governments in disaster risk reduction in coordination with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. Another successful experience has been the Latin American and Caribbean network of digital gateways. This involves 13 countries with 17 different ports. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now let's move to the representative from Brazil. The floor is yours.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Various factors can explain the continued expansion of South-South cooperation. Here we would mention the participatory horizontal process in its design, as well as the adoption and implementation of various types of initiatives, the adaptation of practices and technologies to lead to improved final products. Further, the harnessing of local capacities of beneficiary countries. And no less important is the comparative fall in cost of implementation of such projects. However, we don't fully understand the way in which these comparative advantages have allowed developing countries to increasingly share their knowledge, experiences, and successful case studies. Therefore, one of the challenges faced by governments in developing countries is to systematize and share the way in which South-South cooperation works in terms of approaches thereto and practices, and the way in which the principles have remained relevant for almost half a century and continue to be relevant and sufficient. In order to ensure this, we need to involve more stakeholders in these processes. We believe that we need to go beyond the mere dissemination of information on South-South cooperation projects and our best practices and successful case studies. The exchange of experience among governments of developing countries on various aspects related to the management of South-South cooperation would allow involved stakeholders to step up their levels of efficiency, and this would increase productivity of the South-South cooperation agendas. And as a result of that, we would be able to identify new opportunities for cooperation through bilateral modalities among developing countries, among two or more developing countries, or trilateral among developed countries and international organizations. And we would do so to be able to better address and more broadly address the priority interests for the development of our peoples and our countries. And against this backdrop of new opportunities, or rather within this context, I would include associations as non-public stakeholders. I would also include the private sector, so that we could all work together in activities related to increasing economic productivity, technical innovation, and the creation of new jobs. The UN system could support the establishment of observatories and portals, as well as relevant sectors in academia in developing countries, in order to produce more and better understanding of the comparative advantages of South-South cooperation. And this would lay the foundations for the continued expansion of the opportunities of this modality of cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the representative from the ILO, the International Labour Organization. Mr. Fab.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Chair. South-South and triangular cooperation has been adopted by the ILO as one of the most effective cooperation modality to advance decent work agenda, and even more now with respect to the SDGs, objective number 8. Basically to deepen regional cooperation integration towards achieving decent work for all and sustainable development, for developing national productive capacities through exchange of knowledge, lessons learned, and experiences, and disseminating and sharing of innovative development solutions from the countries of the South. Indeed, in the last decades, with focus on regional, sub-regional, and inter-regional cooperation, the ILO has successfully established partnership with various regional organizations engaged in South-South triangular cooperation, such as the BRICS, the IPSA, G7+, the Community of the Portuguese-speaking countries, Mercosur, the Pacific Community, ASEAN, ECOWAS, and UN Regional Economic Commissions. Some achievements of the ILO around the world have been highlighted in the 2018 report of the Secretary General on the state of the South-South cooperation, such as just three I'll name right now. In Africa, in 2017, ILO constituents in Africa adopted the South-South cooperation and decent work in Africa. It's a framework for action that provides for the creation of a South-South cooperation coordination facility in the region. In the Southeast Asia, the ILO is collaborating with the government of China to facilitate regional learning between China and member states of the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations on the future of work. Third, the Latin America area, the ILO is also playing a key role in the regional initiative of Latin America and the Caribbean free of child labor. Furthermore, the South-South technical cooperation projects have contributed to the development of national productive capacities and employment issues throughout exchange modalities among countries, as well as through training programs. We have experiences in Africa, in Central African Republic, and also in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Mali, and peer learning between Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, and Iraq on the promotion of decent work approach to crisis response and recovery, and also on learning from Malaysia and Thailand to strengthen the Pakistani compensational system, among others. And finally, the ILO has made efforts also to promote dissemination of good practices. In 2016, the office, in cooperation with the ILO Training Center, where the United Nations also is housed and sheltered, has organized the first ever South-South Technical Cooperation Academy with the support of the Partnership Department in our HQ department in Geneva. Over 2 biennium of endeavor, over 1,000 experts were provided with training and tools and policy guidance regarding the application of South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation as well, to promote decent work for all. And last, the ILO is also pleased to reaffirm that through our South-South meeting point portal, south-south.net, we provide access to a wealth of knowledge and resources related to South-South technical cooperation and decent work. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And allow me now to give the floor to the representative from the Food and Agriculture Organizations, FAO. Seat number 153, please. The floor is yours.
I will bring some extracts from the statement of our Director General, Graziano da Silva. FAO attaches high importance to the outcome of this conference on South-South cooperation, which will shape and guide our work in South-South and triangular cooperation in the years ahead. I will not read the long list of projects and programs that we have done in the last 35 years, but over these years we have scaled up FIO support to South-South cooperation. Today, this approach is mainstreamed in every facet of our work at FIO. Under the SDG, whose indicators we are part of the custodianship in FIO with other UN agencies, facilitating knowledge exchanges on good policies and practices on agriculture, food security and nutrition, water management, agro-processing, innovation, and biodiversity is central to our work in South-South and triangular cooperations. Capacity building, policy coordination, regional integration, and interregional linkages are also essentials for South-South and triangular cooperation to make a difference. I would like to signal that FIO has created the South-South Cooperation Gateway, an online platform for knowledge exchanges. We also support the mapping, identification, documentation, and dissemination of good practices on South-South and triangular cooperations related to our mandate, initiatives such as the City-to-City initiative on food security and nutrition, farmer-to-farmer exchanges on sustainable agriculture practices, and knowledge exchange platform on poverty reduction are few examples in this regard. FIO recognizes that adequate financial and technical resources are critical for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We also recognize that ODA and public money will never be enough. So we need to mobilize private sector into this cooperation for the SDGs, and the key to this endeavor is the establishment of trust funds with key partners blending private and public resources. Looking ahead, the current challenges needs new strategy. The SecGen mentioned innovation. We need to innovate South-South cooperation, and the strategy must be informed by the lesson learned. So at 1 o'clock, we will launch a book, which is South-South and Triangular Cooperations. It's an analysis of the results and the lesson learned in the last 40 years. This will be done at Hotel Étoile at 1 o'clock, just after this meeting. Let me conclude, Madam Co-Chair. FAO is developing a new vision to give words to this innovation that has been called upon by our Secretary General. And we affirm our commitments for the furtherance of South-South and triangular cooperation in the areas of agriculture, food security and nutrition. We thank the host, the government of Argentina, and the Secretariat at the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation for the successful organization of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the South American Institute of Government Health. The floor is yours. It's seat number 201, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. South-South cooperation is a development tool that allows greater choices, evolutionary and strategic leverage of sustainable development towards the 17th SDG. An important aspect is that South-South cooperation reinforces regional cooperation among developing countries and requires the strengthening of institutions and organizations dedicated to South-South cooperation. In the sense, the work developed by the South American Institute for Government and Health of the Union of South American Nations, ISAGS-UNASUR, is an example of how to create opportunities and to allow the cooperation between the South American countries in the area of public health. Based on the principle of access to health as a human right that must be guaranteed by national governments, ISAGS has 3 projects considered by the UNESCO as best practices cases last year. On the SDG number 3, Good Health and Well-being, the 5-year technical assistance plan on cervical cancer was designed to curb growth in new cases and prevent avoidable death from cervical cancer in the region, and was developed under a mandate from UNASUR's Board of Ministers of Health with funds from the UNASUR Common Initiative Funds. It has also been recognized by the Pan American Health Organization as an important strategic tool in the context of its Plan of Action for Cervical Cancer Prevention and Control from 2018 to 2030. The other project is the Medicines Price Bank of UNASUR, that is a platform that looks for the strengthening of the bargaining power of the states in order to obtain better prices for medicines and allow the sharing of most successful public policies. The initiative was developed by the Group of Universal Access to Medicine, GAUMO, of UNASUR, which coordination by the moment was in charge of Argentina, and was also funded by the Fund of Common Initiatives of UNASUR. Based on the best reported price in 2017, which countries can consult through the bank platform, only for the first 30 medicines included by that time, the savings possibly achieved could be of $950 million per year. On the SDG number 17, Partnerships for Goal, the virtual course on health diplomacy in the context of South American integration was the mentioned initiative. The course was a joint partnership of ISAGS with Oswaldo Cruz Foundation, Fiocruz Brazil, and Flaxo Argentina. Its goal was to strengthen the capacities of health diplomacy within South American Ministry of Health and to contribute to consolidating their capacities, health diplomacy, and to strengthen regional cooperation. Considering the success of this course, we launched this week the South American Course of Government in Health that aims to strengthen the knowledge available about the health governance tools for professionals of public health area. It has a participation of high-level professionals and experts on health and international relations and counts on students from 11 countries from South America and 1 from Caribbean. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the representative from Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Sierra Leone co-chairs the G7 plus group of countries. This group of countries we've adopted a form of fragile to fragile cooperation known as F2F cooperation. This cooperation basically deals with bringing countries that have gone similar, that have undergone conflicts and other crises to share experiences with those who are experiencing similar situations. We believe that in doing so, we'll be able to achieve the 2030 agenda. And since 2013, we've initiated this F2F cooperation, and we've undertaken a number of initiatives in terms of sharing experiences with colleagues in similar situations, because we know and we believe that who knows it, feels it, knows it. In this respect, we've undertaken peer learning initiatives where we brought countries with similar experiences to share with other countries that need those experiences. And we've undertaken this through study tours, through roundtables, etc. We've undertaken we've undertaken peace initiatives in Central African Republic, in Guinea-Bissau, to ensure that the situations in those countries are fully addressed. In Central African Republic, for instance, the G7 Plus carried out high-level missions with the representation of Shanana Gusma from Timor-Leste, wherein a number of refugees that were camped at the airports were resettled through the F2F cooperation. We also supported, through this F2F initiative, elections in Guinea-Bissau and Central African Republic. Within countries, we've used these initiatives to undertake fragility assessments using knowledge from other countries, such as DRC, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. And in the height of the crisis, of the Ebola crisis in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, Timor-Leste, through the F2F cooperation, provided $2 million to support the fight against the Ebola virus. We believe that these are initiatives that we need to build on to better explore the potential for triangular cooperation, reach out to non-G7 plus countries for cooperation, explore the synergies between the F2F and South cooperation, and identify peace champions from across the G7 plus to facilitate mediation, reconciliation for peace in countries in conflict, and increasing the scope and impact of the fragile to fragile cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to the International Trade Union Confederation, C203.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak on behalf of International Trade Union Confederation. The Sustainable Development Goals are central in the trade union agenda because of the fact that they are founded on rights, they are universally relevant, and because they are featured on the three interrelated economic, social, and environmental dimensions. The trade union movement calls for a new social contract for governments, business, and workers with a floor of a universal labor guarantees for all workers. This means rights are respected, jobs are decent with minimum living wage and collective bargaining. Workers have some control over working time, social protection, coverage is universal, due diligence and accountability must drive business operations, and the social dialogue ensures just transition measures for climate and technology. The SDGs represent a key avenue to foster a new developmental model demanded by trade unions worldwide. Development cooperation, including South-South and Triangular Cooperation as STC, are critical elements to support change along this path. Trade unions are strongly involved in SSTC. Trade unions are strongly involved in SSTC through programs covering a range of crucial areas to achieve the SDGs, such as labor rights, social protection, gender equality, organizing workers, enhancing social dialogue processes, and industrial relations. In terms of social cooperation, for example, our short-term initiative on globalization and trade union rights gathers trade union from 35 countries in the global south to lead a global campaign against the use of asbestos. As far as triangular cooperation is concerned, the Asian Labour Movement, with the support of Belgian trade unions, established a permanent network among trade unions in Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Myanmar. We work together to standardize labor rights in multinational companies and their supply chains, as well as promoting best practices of social dialogue with multi-stakeholders. These brief showcases are samples of trade union SSTC's programs which directly contribute to the SDGs and complying with the development effectiveness principles. On the basis of our vast experiences and expertise in SSTCs, we call for SSTC initiative to be focused on promoting the achievement of SDGs. In particular, SSTC can be a key tool for generating full and productive employment and decent work for all SDGs 8, as shown by many examples of SSTC's projects led by both government and trade unions. Therefore, We call on all SSTC actors to prioritize those SDGs related to decent work and climate justice in all SSTC's projects and programs, such as SDGs 1, 5, 8, 10, 13, and 16. Last but not least, we welcome to the current connotation of SSTC as a complement, not as a substitute to North-South cooperation. At the same time, thanks to its emphasis on shared values and priorities within similar development contexts, SSC has the potential to expand the global governance of development cooperation by enabling development countries to play a greater role in shaping international decision-making processes. We count on SSTC's actors to raise its level of ambitions and take on the responsibility of promoting a development that thus leaves no one behind. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your statement. Allow me now to give the floor to representative from the Commonwealth Secretariat. 176, please.
Thank you. The principles of South-South collaboration, horizontal exchange, ownership, and non-conditionality and solidarity have always been hallmarks of the Commonwealth. The history of the Commonwealth Fund for Technical Cooperation, for example, is a testament to this institutional culture. And it is with this rich history of Commonwealth South-South cooperation that we, in September last year, signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. In particular, our efforts will be focused initially on a project we have initiated called Southern Solidarity for Sustainable Peace and Development in Small States. In a time of interesting global innovations and democratic challenges, South-South cooperation is an essential tool to enable more diverse opportunities and models for development and create spaces for innovative solutions. In April last year, at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, our heads reiterated the importance of the small states agenda to the Commonwealth and recognized that the Commonwealth has always been a strong advocate for the causes of small states and consistently raised international awareness of their inherent vulnerabilities. The Commonwealth at the forefront of working with our member countries. As we do so, we have found that democratic traditions can only be sustainably strengthened to enable peace when our whole effort is greater than the sum of parts of our efforts. And so in this innovative project that we have embarked on with the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation, we are collaborating with member states, particularly the 31 small states of the Commonwealth, to look at challenges that they are facing. Our initial consultations thus far have pointed to issues such as climate change, natural disasters, the peace and economy nexus, management of natural resources, managing ethnic tensions and enabling social cohesion, enabling and strengthening consensus building to inform institutional strengthening, tackling issues such as organized crime and gang violence, looking at economic diversification, and taking holistic approaches to education. In this manner, we will be doing consultations with our 31 small states and working in partnerships with other agencies to take forward the acceleration of the sustainable development goals in these particular countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Allow me now to give the floor to the representative from the Technical Aid Corps. The floor is yours. If the representative is not here and told, then let's move to the representative from Oxfam, please. Okay. Then if there is no more statements from the floor, then let's go back to the panelists in terms of reflecting on the statements by the member countries or the different organizations. So Yes, please go ahead, Representative from PICA. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I would like to respond to the question raised by Jordanian colleagues regarding the crisis management, in the refugee situation. Well, first of all, I think you need to have an organization established to deal with refugee problems. Or in Turkey, we have Emergency Relief and Disaster Management Agency. Because after 1999, we have, in that year, we had the earthquake. And, we just had many problems to deal with right after the earthquake. So the agency was established right after that. And now we managed, the agency is very efficient. For example, for the crisis, Syrian crisis, we have 3.5 refugees right now living in Turkey. And the agency set up many camps. It's very modern camp. It's not like other refugee camps. It's just like many prefabric houses established in different provinces. And we not only give them the access to food delivery, but at the same time they have access to education, proper education. Starting from kindergarten to elementary and middle school and even universities. And also they got permission to work in Turkey without paying any tax. And so this is what we do in Turkey to deal with refugee problems. As far as the refugee problems outside Turkey is concerned, I gave you example about the Myanmar Rohingya refugees during my speech, both in Myanmar and in Bangladesh. We work closely with the government of Myanmar and government of Bangladesh. We stick to the regulations, stick to their guidance, to assist refugees. And in Turkey, we have TICA is the main principal aid agency. That's why in Turkey we have a kind of crisis management board. When we have problems we need to deal with outside Turkey, we have this kind of board. It is made up of line ministry from health, from agriculture to the, sometimes we get on board the Red Crescent. It's an official NGO in Turkey, and TICA as well. And we have the for example, in Bangladesh, we set up several mobile hospitals, which is taken care of by the Ministry of Health of Turkey, as well. At the same time, the Turkish Emergency Relief and Crisis Management Agency at the same time. And also, apart from that, in order to institutionalize to address the problem, we need to work closely, apart from the government in Bangladesh, as well as we need to do close cooperation with UN agencies like UNICEF, UN Women, WHO, International Organization for Migration. We have close cooperation with UN agencies as well. So this is the key. If you want to be successful to help the refugee problem, to cope with the refugee problem, we have to set up this kind of mechanism to deal with this. This is kind of institutionalization of the our perspective. To deal with the problems, the refugees, and this is the basic idea about to deal with refugee problems. That's why you need to have. Apart from this, we have field offices. This is another important element. We have offices, one in Bangladesh, one in Myanmar. They are the facilitators to channel the whole of the aid operation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would now ask our panelists, Ms. Cornelia Richard, the Vice President, please, for her final comments and wrap-up and reflections on statements made.
Thank you very much.
Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it was quite reassuring listening to all your contributions and your reflections, your experiences here in this session. And I think it also indicates that there is a lot of wealth based on your experiences here, not only in the room, but worldwide. And I think this gives a lot of impetus also for the upcoming agenda on South-South cooperation. From the perspective of the RBA organizations, I think we have got very good examples also how to improve in this regard. The discussion clearly showed from my point of view that apparently there are no thematic limits to this discussion, and we can organize according to the particular demands in our member states these kind of knowledge platforms. I think the art and the key for success in future will be that we find the right dosage of stakeholders, that we bring in also academic experience, private sector experience, and as it was also highlighted by some member states and also organizations, that we have to bring in even more scientific evidence. So I can reassure you that in our joint action plan from the Rome-based agencies working to combat hunger and poverty alleviation, working for poverty alleviation, we will inbuild these experiences, and we will also ensure that we make progress in terms of impact analysis, resource mobilization, and even further partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now our panelist, Mr. Enrique, you want to give us some wrap-up statements?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to emphasize on something that I have already said, but since we have the opportunity to reinforce some messages, I would say, please don't forget people, honestly. I mean, this agenda is very important. And please keep people in the center of the policies. We need a South-South cooperation led by women, women-led, people-centered. That will be quite an important message, you know. And I hope that you agree on this.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency from Bangladesh, please.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair, for giving me the floor to say a few words at the end. Let me thank, on behalf of my minister, to all the delegates who have spoken this morning and also in the afternoon regarding sharing their country experiences and various projects and programs they have undertaken. Not only the member states, but we have also heard from various UN agencies and also NGO and civil society representatives. There is a very rich rapporteur of knowledge and experience sharing. And what our Brazilian colleague mentioned just a few minutes ago, that we need to go beyond dissemination. Therefore, we need to have a solid platform so that these good practices can be actually implemented and replicated across the board in the South. Just 2 or 3 points I would like to mention, which came out very strongly in today's discussions, and that is the role of women and youth and civil society, and also the people, as mentioned by Enrique. This is very important. They should be the driving force. And number 2 is the role of technology. We know that in the South, not necessarily we are sort of inventing cutting-edge technology, but we have a lot of traditional knowledge. Therefore, how this frontier technology can be adapted and used in the south, that could be a real challenge. And then another point which didn't come out very strongly, but our minister yesterday in his statement mentioned, that is there is a very rich diaspora from the south working in the north, who are having a lot of knowledge, experience, and expertise. How to tap those diaspora, that could be another challenge. So these South-South cooperation platforms should also focus that much, and then with the help of the triangular cooperation mechanism, we can truly benefit from this kind of partnership. Thank you, Madam, again.
Thank you very much, and let me now thank all the panelists here, and especially thanks to the secretary of the panel, who's been doing a very efficient and effective job in managing us to stick to our time, but also to ensure effective participation of all, not just the panelists, but all the participants from member countries and institutions and various stakeholders. So I want to thank you for very, very productive and interactive discussions and putting forward ideas, but also challenges and lessons learned in terms of South-South cooperation and how to work more effectively moving forward. And it's very tough to wrap up, but I'm going to give just a bit of some of the highlights and the messaging that we heard throughout our panel today. Mutual respect and mutual benefits, promoting mutual benefits, synergies and cooperation, give more voice to the South-South partners, highlight how transitional economies have greater ability to understand and thus design the development solutions and put their own policies into effect, rethinking the development agendas, as all countries have experiences to share, and we should take stock of all lessons learned from these experiences. We also have highlighted that both the North and South are necessary to bring together diversity and complementarity. Effectiveness development cooperation in triangular cooperation has been highlighted. The need to measure financial flows to development across the world, capturing data from countries as well as private sector and other actors, and the role of the private sector in achieving the SDGs is an important element that was also highlighted by several of the participants. The data and the informed decision-making is another area which member countries have highlighted, where we need to reach out more to international institutions for building the local capacities on that front. Also highlighted by several member countries, the challenges and the pitfalls, and how can we also reflect on lessons learned from that and how to make use of it for us to do the leap in terms of growth and inclusivity. Diverse experiences is key in promoting cooperation. Traditional partners find greater opportunity in engaging South-South cooperation. Wealth is not centered only in these countries, but rather in companies and individuals, that we also need to be part of the and more inclusive in the decision-making process and implementation. And the various challenges, main issues highlighted was also in addressing the issues of inequality, gender mainstreaming, empowering women, has been highlighted also on our panel, but also by member countries. Youth empowerment and being more inclusive in also the decision-making process, but also in the South-South cooperation implementation process. Climate change and the environmental issues. And I hope I have not missed some of the issues raised, but thank you all for such rich discussions. And before closing, I would like to remind you that the interactive panel discussions number 2, entitled Challenges and the Strengthening of the Institutional Framework of South-South Cooperation and Triangular Cooperation, will take place this afternoon from 3 to 6 p.m. in this same conference room. So we encourage you to actively participate in that, because it complements our discussions this morning. And then there is also an interactive panel discussion 3 that is entitled Scaling Up the Means of Implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in Support of the South-South Cooperation and triangular cooperation, which will also take place this afternoon in parallel to session 2, meaning from 3 to 6 in the plenary hall where we had the opening. Thank you again, and wish you a very productive, successful day, and also tomorrow for our closing of this very important forum. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.